Last week I got some bad news, and I felt relieved. That doesn't make much sense, does it? But I'm going to tell you how. This is the Company of One podcast, and we're here helping you to take charge of your income in your career. So let me give you the story. It was one of those meetings that you know was coming. It was a virtual meeting, a screen full of faces. We'd all seen the same signs. Enrollment, in particular, this is graduate school, enrollment had been declining. Budgets had been getting tighter. And these things you start seeing and you start trying to have conversations, right? See, the conversations have been changing. Now, I want to be clear about something. This isn't a story about leadership failure. I'm part of that leadership, so I'm not going to say it was failure. The real issue wasn't leadership, but it was that other players on the team, the ones who needed to have a voice, hadn't been in the room yet. All right, so we'd seen signs, but we hadn't got together to talk about things, and you know how these things go. But now, once they were all in the room, everything moved fast. Then someone finally said it out loud. The programs are changing. Summer teaching, which is one of the things we do. We teach in academia, we teach through the year, and then we teach in the summer. Summer teaching is going away. Some hard decisions have to be made. And when we logged off, I sat there for a second and realized something that surprised me. I felt relieved. Most people think bad news creates stress. Sometimes it removes it. So for the past year, we'd all been living in some uncertainty. We knew something wasn't right. We hoped it would turn around. We waited for the next enrollment report. The uncertainty of those kind of things is exhausting because you're still planning, you're still doing, even though you're thinking this is not going to work out the way you think it is, right? You replay every possible scenario in your mind. Even, should I stay? Should I leave? Will things get better? Am I overreacting? Then one meeting changes everything. Not because it changes your future, but because it confirms the future you already knew was coming. That's what happened to me. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not excited about losing income. That's what it is to me. By the end of the meeting, I realized I would be losing about $50,000 a year. That's real. That's real money. Who wants to lose money, right? But here's what happened. Next, in that same meeting, once the obvious was finally out in the open, something shifted. We stopped protecting the story that everything was fine, and we started asking completely different questions. What could we do now that we couldn't do before? We started talking about opportunities we'd been dancing around for years, ideas we'd been ignoring or just didn't have the resources for. We started asking whether we could reallocate what we did have toward the parts that actually had a future. In less than 20 minutes, that meeting went from bad news to what does this make possible? Now, if you're a Dan Miller fan, you will have heard this. What does this make possible? That question isn't mine. I picked it up from Dan Miller, and he's talked about it for years on his podcast. And it stuck with me the first time I heard it because it does something specific. It doesn't pretend the bad news isn't bad. It just refuses to stop there. I'll give you another example. One happening right now. We are in the middle, personally, of a legal dispute with our power company, an eminent domain dispute. It's frustrating. There are real costs to it. There's real losses. But even there, we keep coming back to the same question. What does this make possible? No matter how it turns out, what does this make possible? And honestly, we're seeing opportunities in the battle we wouldn't have gone looking for otherwise. Now, if you're a person of faith, if you're a Christian, if you're a believer, you've probably heard some version of Romans 8:28. Paraphrase says something like this: for those who love God, all things work together for good. Those verses are for persons of faith. But others, we might recognize the pattern underneath it. Even hard things can be pointed somewhere useful. I think this happens in a lot more places than universities. I mean, we know it does, right? Maybe your company is going through another reorganization. Maybe AI is changing the work you've been doing for years. Maybe your industry isn't growing the way it once was. Maybe you've been thinking about retirement. Maybe you've simply lost your excitement you used to have on Monday morning. Maybe you never had excitement on Monday morning. Deep down, you already know something has changed. You're just waiting for confirmation. Right? And here's what I've learned. The hardest part often isn't the bad news. It's the waiting. It's the spending months, sometimes years, hoping that someone else will make the uncertainty disappear. In a good way or bad way, whatever. Eventually they do. A new boss arrives, a budget gets cut, a project ends, company restructures, when a customer leaves, so many things. And suddenly everyone says everything has changed. But it usually didn't. It had been changing for a long time. It did for me. I knew it was changing. I didn't know every detail, but enough to begin preparing. I think many of us already know more than we admit. We know we can read the tea leaves is the word we hear. We know our industry is changing. And if you think it's not, you're lying to yourself, right? We know our motivation has also changed. That just happens over time. We know that the career we've built isn't going to look the same 5 years from now, probably next year. The real question isn't whether change is coming. The real question is whether we build options before someone else makes the decision for us. For me, that involves exploring what's next, not because I'm forced out of this one thing, but because I finally have clarity to stop wondering and to start building. So let me leave you with these 3 questions for yourself. First, if nothing changed over the next 3 years, would you be happy? Second, what could you begin building today that would give you more options tomorrow? And finally, third, if bad news arrived next month or tomorrow, what would you have wished you had already started? But underneath all 3 of those questions is a bigger one, whether it's new bad news or continuing bad news or just a difficult situation you're already in. What does this make possible? Because sometimes the best career decisions, and I might even go beyond career decisions, but let's just say the best career decisions don't begin with good news. They begin with the day reality finally catches up with what you've known all along, and you finally ask the question that opened things up. So if this episode hit home, hit follow here on YouTube or on the podcast, whatever you're on, and don't miss what's next. And if you're ready to start turning clarity into options, I put together a free resource called Moving Past Obstacles. You'll find it down below in the resources or at dalecallahan.com. This has been the Company of One podcast, and I'll see you next time.